Do you want to start?
Go for it.
So, welcome to episode 3 off the rails here. Wrapped up the open in the last episode, and we did get our first viewer question. So, I'm going to say it at the beginning today. If you have questions, leave them in the comments. We are going to take a look at them and then answer them in the episode. So, we did get a couple questions in one comment, in one comment.
Yeah.
But we're going to stick with one today because it does kind of tie in nicely to the age group semifinals here. So,
Shout
like
out
I said,
Ronnie.
yeah, Ronnie over
Thanks for
here.
watching, buddy.
So the first one that I think that I liked and that we're going to do today is the different advantages with movements for different body types,
Okay.
which I do kind of think ties in nicely with the workouts for the age group that they released.
Yep.
So I think what we're going to do today, just go through each workout, kind of say which body type might work better than others per workout. And then if there's any other comments about the workouts themselves, we can definitely talk on that as well.
Okay.
But before going into that, anything you have to add?
Well, let's just say different body types, just in general for CrossFit. I think, especially at the higher level, I'm assuming the question usually refers to more of like height differences,
Yeah.
like tall versus short. And we kind of have some general like data over the years that your better CrossFitters on average are for males, I believe, between 5'8" to 5'10"
Mhm.
and somewhere around 190 pounds in that area. And then for ladies, I think it's like 5'5", 5'4", 5'5", and somewhere around like 150 to 160 ish, I believe.
Yeah.
And again, these people are ripped. This isn't like, oh, that lady's fat, 5'4", 160 pounds. Like, no, this is like muscle,
Yeah.
right? Same thing for the guys. And so it is generally a shorter athlete. If you compare like normal sports, like people are taller and bigger, like football, basketball players, right? For CrossFit is typically a shorter person. And that does have to do with a lot of rep ranges of motion and levers and things like that. I mean, in the weightlifting world, most of your weightlifters are typically shorter, right? But the other side of this question is more on the way I like to think about it too is because you're starting to see some differences here, even at the CrossFit Games level, right? You think of your Jason Hoppers, your Dallin Peppers, guys like that, James Sprague, Brent Fikowski's over time. Well, what do a lot of them have in common? They played sports growing up, right? Or trained really hard for sports growing up. And so really I think it comes down to genes is a good place to start. Like, what are your genes? Your natural fast twitch muscle fibers and slow twitch muscle fiber, like balance, right? And then, did you train that at a young age to be more explosive, be more powerful, and be more fast twitch, right? So, if you did that, or you were naturally given that, you're probably going to be a better CrossFitter, right? Most CrossFit athletes that are really good weren't long distance runners before. They might have been track athletes, again, fast twitch, explosiveness, but you don't see like a marathon runner breaking into CrossFit over time, right? So, two things to think about, like not just height, but also like, do you have the fast twitch to move weights efficiently, to hit those hard, fast workouts like a Fran, like an Isabel, with the intensity of it. Not saying we don't need the slow twitch and the long endurance stuff, but it is not the majority of what builds muscle and what we would consider strength, power, and all that stuff. It's a part of it, right? So I think if we're looking at body types, height makes a difference, but also like your muscle fiber ratio does make a difference, and that can be trained one way or the other. Or some people can work hard to help make up the difference, but the people that were naturally given it or at a younger age were able to train harder on those things are the ones that we're seeing at the higher end of CrossFit Games athletes, right? So if you play volleyball like a Brent Fikowski, football like a Jason Hopper, they can, I don't know if I said Jason Hopper or Jason, I don't know, Jason Hopper. Anyway, they did that growing up, so they have that fast twitch in them, and they are taller athletes, so that helps them with the power and the things like that. But on that note, we had Colton Mertens just smash every single open workout, and he's a shorter athlete, right?
Yeah.
And the open was more of how fast can you do this range of motion? And when you are shorter and you have less levers or length of levers to still meet a standard of a lockout or something like that, you're going to be able to cycle things faster, and that's why he's able to go faster. So there's differences there, but again, he's an outlier, still makes it. Tall people might be outliers, still make it. But if you look at your average overall, after I think the last 10, 15 years, you would see that kind of what we first talked about, males being around that 5'8" to 5'10", 190, and females 5'4", 5'5", and like 160, I think is what it is. Don't quote me on that, but it's been a while since I've seen those stats.
Yeah, and I do think we've also kind of seen a transition to like having an advantage to be a bigger athlete. Like, I mean, Froning's what, like 5'9", Frazier was that 5'6" range,
Yeah.
and now we have Sprague, who's probably close to that 6 foot. So it is interesting, just kind of over time, how it has gone from maybe you're in that 190 to the 5'8" range, and now it's like, well, if you're 6 foot and 210, 215,
Yeah.
it might work out better for you, just because they have gone to heavier weights over time.
Yeah.
And just every other kind of movement that they've done.
Yeah, and I mean, it does come back to programming, right?
Yeah.
You could program more bias towards a short person, or more bias towards a taller person, or more strength bias, which is what we kind of talked about in the last one.
Yeah.
And yeah, the programming as of late
Kind of favors a bigger
favored
person.
more of the bigger people. Yeah,
At least
and
in the games.
Yeah, right.
In the open, like you said, I mean, Bolton crushed everything, and he's 5'4",
Yeah,
maybe. So, yeah.
call it 5'4".
Yeah.
It'd be nice.
But I think what is kind of a good point is the programming dictates it, really.
Yeah.
Which is kind of interesting when I look at these workouts in specific, that it looks overall kind of well balanced with maybe a slight bias towards a shorter person. What's kind of the thought there for you?
I mean, we look at a clean plus a muscle up, and yeah, it is a shorter range of motion to get a bar from the ground to your shoulders. But this is again for the age range groups. This isn't for semifinal like individuals trying to go to the games at that level, right? This is for the age range. So they did bring these weights down a little bit, but that's still a heavy weight, right? And especially for a 10-minute AMRAP. So then you could say maybe that bigger, stronger athlete like can move that weight better. And then when it comes down to a pull up, a muscle up necessarily, like the range of motion is almost the same for everybody. And you can still take advantage of a big kip swing as a bigger person. So really, I don't know if that one necessarily has an advantage for a shorter or a taller athlete. It's probably more just technique. Are you an efficient weightlifter, and are you good on the rig? And it's probably going to come down to pacing. I would say, because it's like, oh, 1, 1, and 2, and 2, like not that bad, but like who's good when it gets to 8 and 8, 10 and 10, right? Like those levels. So it will definitely become a capacity, workout, I think. But for that, I might even say a taller athlete might do better. I don't know. I mean, a short, powerful athlete,
Yeah. I mean, I think at first when I looked at it, I did think a taller person, just because it is like you're getting heavier with the more reps on the cleans. And then I thought about it a little bit more, and I was like, well, when we're at that 10 round, right? And you have, again, I'm just going to call it out because it's easy. You have Colton Mertens versus Yella Hosta, who's at 6'2".
Yeah.
If they're the exact same pace, Colton's just going to cycle that so much faster.
That's true.
So now, granted,
his press on the muscle is going to be a little lower.
He's got a couple inches less.
Right. Fair.
So I think it just, like you said, it depends on the athlete.
Let's say it's shorter.
Yeah. At least.
What about this guy?
This one,
the rowing one.
This one I feel is kind of, it favors a taller person because of the calories on the row.
Okay.
If it was a less row and the shoulder to overhead was more of like a piece here, I feel like it's pretty even.
Yeah. Okay.
With a bias towards a tall person because of the calories needed per row.
Right. I think the row does make it a game changer. And if the volume stayed the same on the shoulder to overhead, this workout looks kind of familiar, by the way.
Yeah.
There's someone else that programs something like this. What we're looking at, by the way, is the if y'all can't see it, WOD 2, 75 calories for guys, 60 for ladies, 21 shoulder overhead at weight 1, and then the row stays the same, and then 15 shoulder overhead at weight 2, and then the row stays the same, and then the last one is 9 shoulder overhead at weight 3. So the weight goes for guys from like 135 to 185 to 225, I believe, and then the ladies, I think, is like 95, 115. 150, 125, 155?
Yeah, female 85, 125, 155.
Okay.
Male 135, 85, 225.
Okay, cool. So the fact that the reps are going down, I think a bigger person has an advantage here because they're gonna be more efficient on all 3 rows and gain that time that they may lose to a shorter person on a shorter overhead, but the reps are going down, so I think they're gonna keep the advantage there. And most people, once it's on your shoulders, the higher level athletes, they're gonna be hanging on to these weights and getting back on that rower. So to be able to hold on for an unbroken set or maybe 2 sets with 1 drop, and then get back on the rower and not have to work as hard as a shorter athlete has to work on that row consistently. I think in the long run, it is going to take a taller athlete is going to do better here for this workout. I had something else and I lost it for that. Oh, we were talking about this beforehand about kind of some of the weights and stuff we were looking at, but I do like that the female calories are more than that 70% that sometimes we had seen in the past, right? With the weights, we usually see that 70% of what females are presented with on weights, and then that was transferring over to like a bike and a row. But it looks like we're trying to close that gap a little bit more because I think over the years we've seen the female athletes crush some of those things because they're still putting out power on these machines. So it's probably more of like, hey, we're looking for these athletes to be on here for 2.5, 3 minutes. Okay, let's test that with some of our female athletes. Okay, what did they get close to? Oh, cool, that's 60, not 50, I think is what it would have been, right? So it's like, okay, we want them to be on this rower for this amount of time before each set of these shoulder to overhead, not necessarily looking at evenness on power. It's more like time, like running. Like if you're a good runner, this 800 is going to take you X amount of time. So we should all run the same distance because that's more of a we want we want you to breathe. So I think they're trying to treat this rower kind of the same way of like we want it to be equal, not a power output type of thing. Okay. I hope that makes sense.
It does.
And then your next one, 3 rounds, 30. So this one I looked at originally and I was like, man, I would have loved to see more handstand walking. And I get that it looks good. The numbers look good. 3 rounds, 30-foot handstand walk, 30 pull-ups, 30 burpee over dumbbell, and 30 toe to bar. I feel like that handstand walk is going to be super quick. And then the pull-ups will probably be a butterfly for most really good athletes. Maybe 2 sets there. And then the burpees, I feel like you're just going to feel like you drag through the mud comparatively to the handstand walk, right? So time-wise on each movement, I feel like we could have seen a longer handstand walk there per round, maybe more like a 60 foot. Even if it's in 15-foot segments, like down, back, to save floor space. I'm assuming that's why they did the 15 feet thing. And also like they like the numbers to look good. But I think in the long run, the handstand walk is going to become kind of a rest recovery almost. And the burpee toe to bar area is going to end up kind of hurting you. But back to the tall short thing, definitely shorter person's workout. Because the pull up rep range or the cycle range, the burpee over, like they're not going to stand up as tall, and then the toe to bar is going to be a little more compact. So definitely could see a shorter guy crushing this a little bit more. But and again, this is the age group stuff. So I was looking at it as like, oh, those look kind of easy. But somebody over here programmed an easy looking workout for us this week. And a lot of people were like, oh, that looks easy. But once you start looking at the volume of it and the fact that it is easy, that means these people are going to have to hold on and push, right? And that's what's going to make it hurt, right? It doesn't always have to be hard to hurt. They're probably more mad when it's easy because then it's like, I gotta go hard. I gotta go for 30 unbroken pull-ups. I gotta go for 30 unbroken toe to bar on my first set. Like I should be able to kick up and do this handstand walk unbroken with a pirouette or down, kick back up and back. Like the fact that it's not further or harder movements means that it's going to be a sprint, even though it has a 20-minute time cap, which I thought was interesting.
That feels kind of long for that.
Yeah, especially for semis. But we'll see. I haven't done it, so I can't tell you. I mean, personally, I'm not a semifinal level athlete, so I like the 20-minute cap. I think I could get it done in 20 minutes, but we'll see some of these guys do it. And same thing here. Like, I do think at a high level, 20 minutes is going to seem like a lot of time. So I another just step back of like, I kind of like this. And I didn't look at the snatch. That was one thing we want to look at. What was the snatch time cap? Because that was what we talked about in the last one. If we saw it, what would it be?
10 minutes.
10 minutes. Okay. I think that's what we guessed. I like that it's set up this way because it's even if you made it to semifinals, maybe snuck in there, you're still going to get a chance to do these workouts and
Yeah.
see what they feel like. It's not some really short, like we only want games level to finish this workout, and they're only going to get an experience. They kind of expanded it out to like, hey, you made it to this level. Now you get to do these things if you want to, and you're going to get a good chance to do all these reps. So I do like that, even though my first glance was like, oh, they're going to be done faster than that. I guess the goal is to get everyone to finish and see where you stack up instead of like, hey, you can't really do this. So anyway, we got, I'll call it even there. We got tall, we got short, WOD 4 for time. This one I do like. It's a 7-minute cap too. I need to write these up here. 7 minute and 10. So this is definitely more of a sprint as well. 7-minute cap, and 10 minutes here. Just so when we're looking at it, I can see it too. But so back to our last podcast, we talked about wanting the dumbbell lunge, and here it is, right? But they're starting with it. And again, this is a 7-minute cap, so it's a sprint. So we're looking at probably holding onto that dumbbell for all of it. I'd be curious. I didn't look at the floor layout. If it's 15 feet, that's gonna be a lot of turning around. If it's 25, that's a little better. That's down back 3 times.
15 feet.
Okay, so that's a lot of stop, turn around, and stop, turn around. Which, if you're trying to hold on, that's your arm in the air a little bit more and a little bit of that rotational as you're spinning. So, it's going to create probably a little more fatigue than if it was a longer distance and you were just able to walk, like lock it in and walk, which is kind of cool and more of a chance for the athlete to put the dumbbell down. Like, oh, I got to stop and turn around. That's a good break versus the ones that want to hang on, like they're going to do better. So I do like that. And then the 50 alternating dumbbell snatch, like you're already under shoulder fatigue. So now let's hinge a lot. And then at the end, just killer 50 box jump overs while your legs are smoked, your shoulders are smoked, your midline smoked. And then like, do you have the capacity to go? So, I mean, I guess taller athlete gets an advantage here because of the lunge length. And then also because the box jump overs are going to be a lot easier to top over at a fatigued rate. I guess I'm going to assume that they're making them step down. They're not allowed to rebound potentially. That's what we've seen a lot because we don't want those Achilles injuries. And that kind of probably helps the taller athlete as well because it's just like step, step, go, step, step versus a shorter athlete is going to have to get like all the way down to the ground and then explode again. So, tall, short, tall, and then I mean, just classic weightlifting. That's usually a shorter person's thing. So I do think it's very well balanced in the sense that I don't think this one really has an advantage, but maybe later it does. And then tall, short, tall, short. So and 3 snatches at 215. Man, 10-minute cap. Good luck. Like you got to be able to move that way, right? And that's just a technique thing. Like, do you have it or do you not? Right? There's no other way of doing that. So I do like it, and just to take it back to our last podcast, like we talked about, like, are we going to see it? And I think the answer is yes. Because if it's in age group, it's probably going to be in the regular semifinals as well, right? So our athlete that made it, I immediately sent these to him, and I was like, hey, expect this, but maybe harder. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and maybe not. Like, maybe it's going to be very similar. But I like the idea of them. Like, I mean, I don't know if you want to talk about this anymore. We could take it to that next thing of like what we might see. But I think in the grand scheme of things, I like what came out. I think it's an overall good test. We're seeing those harder weights, those harder movements that we talked about we wanted previously. I think there's enough in here to separate the right people out because I do think, the weights go up in weight or are already at a moderate to heavy weight and then it becomes a volume thing. The only easy one in here is probably the WOD 3 in the sense of like if you can handstand walk, it's easy. But again, that just means like who's got the capacity to hurt and sprint it, right? Not like, oh, let me just kind of scale this back and get through it in 20 minutes. And the rest of it's just like, show us what you got and what you can do. And I think the higher end level athletes probably are going to look at this and go, oh, like I can crush that, I can crush that, I can crush that. Like there's not really a hole. And then you'll have some athletes that are going to look at each of these and be like, oh, that last weight, shoulder to overhead. Ooh, those snatches. Ooh, maybe it is handstand walking for some people like that. the cardio person we talked about last time,
Oh,
maybe
yeah.
sneaking in, that doesn't have the capacity to do handstand. Like they might be able to sneak through a couple 5 feet segments, but like, they're not going to be efficient enough where they're just kind of cruising around. So I think, there's enough separators throughout all 5 workouts that the right people are going to make it.
Yeah.
And I do like to, and I don't know if they've done this in the past, but I did see it's going to be a blind leaderboard until it's completely over.
Yeah.
So all the workouts will be submitted, not every window, even if there are. I don't know if there's windows or if it all just needs to be done by a certain time. But from start to finish, like no one's going to know where anyone is. So it's like you're going to give it your best, and then you're going to decide was that good enough or not. And then you obviously know you have some other things you need to do. And then okay, do I need to go back and do that one? Do I think I could have done better? So that's going to be an interesting part for it as well. But again, I think your high end level athletes are going to give it a good go. And, probably like, oh yeah, that was good, or definitely could have held on to that when I didn't think I could, and let me redo it. So yeah, pretty happy with what came out for this, at least.
Yeah, I mean, even like if we look at the Open and then kind of into this, they did repeat quite a bit of movement, but I feel like it's actually really, I like it a lot.
Yeah.
Like I can't say that for every year. When we just go from like, okay, the Open, now this is or used to have quarterfinals and so on, where I feel like it's a pretty good transition from the Open into the semis. Again, we were repeating a lot, which I wish we would have changed a couple, like one ring muscle up over there instead of bar. That would have been fun.
There's something that just stood out to me that I didn't realize.
I'll say it now.
There's not a lot of squat.
Oh, interesting.
And we talked about that in the Open.
Yeah.
That there's not a lot of squat.
Yeah.
Like we're still not testing squat capacity.
Yeah. I will say this.
Did you notice that before?
I did. So I will say this because I don't want to say like I'm writing the World Fitness Project, but I do. I'm going to be doing some stuff with them here in the next couple months. But everyone was just completely trashing them for no squatting.
Yeah, I've heard a couple of those comments.
It was funny to see those same people have to kind of talk that back when their precious HQ didn't include squatting as well.
Right.
So it is interesting and funny, like, or maybe we did squat clean up there, or like
there was plenty of opportunity.
A dumbbell squat snatch would have been fun.
Ooh, that would have tested.
We could have. I mean, Isabel, you can do power or snatch.
Yeah, I like that one not being forced to be squat. But this definitely could have been a squat. And I mean, rowing is some leg capacity, but really it's more hinging than squat like capacity.
Yeah.
And 150-foot overhead walking lunge, if that's really our only forced squat.
Yeah.
Below parallel, like that's not a lot.
No.
So definitely a big hole between the Open and here to, that's something I was like looking like push, pull, weightlifting. And then I was like squat. Nope, it's not there. That's kind of crazy, to me that, we're going to have people go to the games and not really, and we talk about this a lot. Like, are the right people going to get there? Do they know how to squat? Yeah, probably. But like the fact that we didn't test it to make sure, is kind of wild. Because if we talk about some of those podcasts, there's a Rich Froning out there, who famously right now has knee issues.
Yep.
And it's like he could have done the Open, done semi. He could have gone to the games this year without worried about his knee and having to squat, which is kind of wild. At least if the individual semifinals athletes follow this same pattern.
Yeah.
Right. This is age group. Okay. So we do need to make sure we clarify that. Like, could semifinals individual be forced to do squat cleans at those weights?
Yeah.
Right. Could they see more of like that squat dumbbell snatch you just talked about, or maybe like a dumbbell thruster in there, I think would be something. Like to go from the overhead walking lunge to dumbbell thruster and then box jump overs at 30-24, like that would be a workout, and it would still have to be a sprint. So there's plenty of room for them to add squatting to your more competitive athletes, if that's how we want to look. Not that age group aren't competitive, because they all would crush me. But it is generally seen that your regular individual athletes are more of that competitive, like, hey, they get to go to the games. This is just age group. This is just masters. This is whatever. But and I do think because the age group is what is it, 14, 15, and then there's a 16, 17, and then there are all the masters divisions, and they probably made these to where all the different age groups could just scale some things up and down, but they didn't want to have to be like, this group can squat and this group can't, and all that stuff. So maybe that's why there's not as much squatting, because it's like you probably don't want to force a bunch of 60-year-olds to do a bunch of heavy squats and things. I don't know. Now that I'm thinking about it, like they still need to show that ability to do that. So interesting. I don't know. I hope we see more squats and the and the things to come.
So
And if not, like you said, like some people are gonna have to eat their words of like what was said and made fun of.
yeah. So I guess to kind of wrap this one up here, let's pretend these are the exact workouts we're going to see in like the individual semifinals.
Okay.
How would you change each workout, maybe 1 to 2 things to make it kind of that individual level compared to age group where we know it 185 is a little bit, we wouldn't see that weight for an individual, I would think.
Yeah. So definitely keeping how to as close to these as possible, probably just upping the weight and then ring muscle up instead of bar muscle up. Like that's the easy one. After we just talked about it, I would love to see squat clean and ring muscle up. I think that'd be cool. Just had a crazy thought that it could be squat snatches and ring muscle ups, which is like Amanda, I believe.
Yep. Nice.
And then that would mean they would do like heavy grace.
Yeah.
Which could be a little cooler. But
yeah,
the fact that we've seen Isabel in a lot of things, I think it's going to stick with what we got.
They're probably
so anyway, but hey, you need help programming, I got you. Yeah. So heavier weights, ring muscle ups, right?
Yeah.
Here, I think just heavier weights. Like the row volume is enough no matter what level athlete you are. I don't think we need to go higher there. So I think just increasing the weights to maybe it starts at 185 for guys, then 225, and then like a
275,
255. I don't know. 275 is a pretty big jump, but again, we want to separate people. So yeah, maybe it is a 275 where it's like, hey, I might be able to clean and jerk that once, so I'm at 9 and I'm just going to do singles, versus a Jason Hopper might just pick up 275
probably wrap it out,
do 9 unbroken, right? So there is going to need, and then whatever the ladies' weights are that revert to that. I'm just going to talk in guys' terms because that's what I know better, I should say. So yeah, I think that would just be the easy change there. Handstand walking, we're not going to see obstacles, so maybe we see that further distance that I was talking about earlier, or forced pirouette, 30 feet unbroken, like 15 down, you have to turn around on your hands and 15 back. That would be the only thing on the handstand walk I think they could force to do. And I don't think it would be like a full turn. It would just be like a 9. You have to go down, turn around on your hands, and come back, and all of that is 1 rep. And then probably chest to bar instead of pull ups, because most of them are going to butterfly it anyway. So butterfly chest bar is still not that hard, and it's still fast. And then burpee over dumbbell stays the same, and toe to bar probably stays the same. Maybe GHDs for the individuals, but that's just more equipment. But I think it was part of the equipment list, so it could be just more core fatigue, trying to get it in there, and seeing the GHD. So that could be it. Dumbbell overhead walking lunge, snatch, and box jump over. I think the lunge stays the same. The dumbbell gets heavier, and if anything, we either see like an overhead dumbbell squat of some sort, whether that's a single arm thruster, or even just holding the dumbbell and squatting. If not, it's still fine how it is. I mean, if we're going to keep things the same, like just make it a 70-pound dumbbell for guys and a 50 for ladies. And then the box will be higher, 30 and 24 for sure. And then heavy Isabella, I think we've seen the 225, 155 weight for almost everything. So that's probably what we're going to see there. So again, up the weights, up the skill level a little bit. There's not much more skill other than ring muscle ups and again, the forced pirouette, I think, and potentially the GHD. But the rest of it's just capacity, weight, and can you move fast? So yeah, I think those are, like, if I had to program right now, I'd be like, hey, here's what you're going to see. Go for it. Like test these things. Even if it wasn't exactly that, it's going to be pretty close. So I mean, better test. I kind of want to test some of them. Like in a much easier, not semifinal level capacity. Just to do them. I even looked at some for some programming for the gym of like, ooh, how could I sneak this in there? Which it does get hard when there's that much rowing or something like that. But like, I think the clean bar muscle up one we could in the next couple.
I think we could do that for sure.
There.
Especially with the cycle being a clean right now. So
yeah. I mean,
maybe we make
there
it a
should
squad clean
be
just to mess with people.
yeah. Most of these, and I do think HQ does a good job of like, hey, you could
Mhm.
program these for class.
Yeah.
Like they're not they're, and that's why we might not see the GHD too. Is like most gyms don't have 10
Yeah.
plus GHDs. So and Total Bar's still a great path,
Mhm.
especially if you can hold on to it. So, and now I'm thinking about the only other thing we might see, there's some kind of increase in reps, but I don't know. 3 rounds of 30 sounds
It
pretty
sounds pretty
good to
good.
me. So, and like I said, I would like to see some of these go into our programming with what we've been doing lately, and a lot of them fit, honestly,
They do.
with some of the stuff we've been doing. So, if you're watching, which some of y'all should be, and most of y'all probably aren't, we're just giving you hints on what's coming.
Yeah. If you pay attention enough and watch the full thing, maybe you'll learn a thing
Yeah.
about what's coming.
Maybe you'll understand.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, I like them, and I do like what's coming. And again, okay, do we see advancement on this at the games, or does it become just a clear board of just like, hey, let's do whatever. We got the right people here, and now we see a lot more squatting or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
But part of me likes it, part of me hates it. We didn't see a wall ball this year
No.
for open or semifinals, and
nothing.
that's usually a regularly like
Mhm.
it's in there. So interesting.
Yeah. Which goes back to the no squatting point.
I know.
So
Yeah. Maybe they're just listening to him.
yeah. You never know. You never know. It
We're
could be.
trying to get him back. No, I doubt
Yeah.
it. Yeah. I think that's a good way to put it. And that's my total thoughts, I think. Between the athlete, good question by the way, Ronnie. Who does do better? And you could pull up stats, and not you necessarily, but anyone can pull up stats and be like, oh, the average CrossFitter is here, height wise, and but the muscle twitch thing, like I could be me at 5'9" and 190 pounds, and like I don't have it. You know what I mean? Like, so it's not just a height and weight thing.
Yeah.
There's other things that are very, very much part of it as well. So
Yep.
good deal.
All right. So, with that said, I know we kind of hit probably everything at this point, but is there anything else that you do want to just kind of closing comments, arguments, whatever it might be?
Um, I'd love to see more squatting,
Yeah.
but other than that, I think in general here, and back to what Nate said in the beginning, leave more comments, leave more questions. Like we are talking about open stuff right now in the semifinals, but like this will change. We'll talk about all kinds of other things, just trying to talk about things that are relevant.
Yeah.
And I think that's really about it for me.
Yeah. So, with that said, everyone, like Cam said, leave some comments. Let us know what you want us to talk about. Go ahead, hit that subscribe button and the like button. We just hit over 1,000 total views on the channel a day or two ago, which is great to see. But thank you all for watching and listening, and we will see you all next week with Off the Rails.